Hey guys, time for our midweek recap, and we finished up our series on Royals. I had a blast teaching this series. It was a lot of fun. We went through several of the kings in the Old Testament, and even some kings that wanted to be king but didn't make it, and we learned a lot of points through this whole series. And just to sum it all up, we had King David, who obviously we talked about the mistakes, the many mistakes, the horrible mistakes that David made, and we came to the conclusion that when you make mistakes, God can help make things right. And then we went on to talk about Absalom, who was never king, obviously tried to be king, tried to overthrow his own father, his own king. To try to get the kingdom himself, and we just because of his own arrogance and just thought he knew best. And so when you think you know best, we taught to be humble instead. And then last week we talked on Solomon, who, when God asked him, "What do you want?" God didn't really put any parameters on that. He just said, "What do you want?" And Solomon asked for something that he needed. He asked for wisdom. And so it says, all right, we came to the point to where when you're not sure what to or who to listen to, ask God for wisdom. We've got people in our ears all the time trying to tell us to do this or don't do this or whatever. But whenever we need to know who to listen to or what to listen to, we should always turn to God for guidance. And then this week, we talked about following directions. I asked the question, do you ever not follow directions, and gave the example that a lot of parents have dealt with as far as, trying to put together that toy on Christmas Eve without reading the instructions, and then you're up till 3 a.m. because you're having to redo it. Any parents listening to me, we've all been there. You know what I'm talking about. But we talked about one more king this week, and that was, we talked about King Jesus. We talked about how Jesus would give instructions and people would disobey. And he said a lot of things that really scared and confused a lot of his followers. But instead of listening and asking more questions or trusting Jesus, a lot of them just gave up and they stopped following him. Like I said to the students Sunday night, if you're following Jesus, it's not always going to be easy. But it's always going to be worth it. So when following God's directions is difficult or scary or confusing, you don't ever want to give up. You want to stay close to Jesus. And so we talked a lot about obedience and how when obedience is difficult, we need to stay close to Jesus. I covered some points on what obedience is. And just to give a quick rundown on that, obedience first is a commitment. Commitment is a hard thing for a lot of us, but it's exactly what Jesus challenges us to do. He challenges us to follow him. And when he says that, he doesn't mean, okay, say you believe me once and then don't even really hardly think about it again. That's not what he's saying. He's challenging us to fully commit to following in his footsteps and then letting God change everything about our lives. Next thing is obedience shows love. Loving God is so much more than our feelings. It's a choice that we make or that we don't make. And so when Jesus tells us to follow him, he's asking us to show that we love him and just like he loves us. And so, and then last, obedience reveals our heart. Obeying Jesus shouldn't be about what we should do or what we want to do. It should be about what we get to do. He's not like the other kings that we talked about in this series. King Jesus, he just doesn't want our blind obedience. He cares about our hearts. And so obeying Jesus, it's not a to-do list. It's an adventure. It's not going to be easy all the time, but Jesus told us that he would never leave us alone on our journey. And so that wraps up the Royal series. Again, I had a blast doing it. Hope everybody's having a good week. Looking forward to starting a new one. We'll see you guys all next week. Bye.